Well, thanks everybody so much for coming on this beautiful summer day. So it's very nice to see everybody, and a special welcome to my twin granddaughters. It's the first time I'm addressing them in a crowd. And so I wanted to tell you a story, not from my book, but a story that we missed. And it's relevant to the season that we're in. The reason we missed it is it's the story that's found in the Torah, the reading after the Torah every week from the prophets. So normally when we read the Parsha Pinchas, the story of Pinchas, who was a great hero of the Jewish people, so we finish with the story about Eliyahu HaNavi, Elijah, the prophet, who's also another great hero of the Jewish people. And this one is a strange story because in this story, and we didn't read it this year. I should say we didn't read it this year because, as so often happens, when that Parsha, when that weekly reading falls within the 3 weeks, which is what we're in now, so we skip it and we go to a passage of consolation. And we don't get to read the story, so I'd like to tell you the story because it's germane. And the story is, well, it's really the denouement to another fascinating story. I urge you to read it. I haven't got time to tell you the whole thing. But basically, if you've ever heard of the story of Eliyahu on Mount Carmel, he made a great miracle, and it was a time the Jews had lost their way, then too, as many now, and he was trying to bring them back, and he had this tremendous event up on Mount Carmel, and he was able to persuade many Jews that indeed this is the right way. And the whole throng that was gathered there shouted out when they saw what he had done. They shouted out, Hashem hu Elokim, God is the Lord, God is the Lord. And that's the words that we finish off every year, Yom Kippur. We say it 7 times, God is the Lord, Hashem hu Elokim. That's the way we finish Yom Kippur. So that's the story, but that's not the story that's read in the Torah. That was the heroic, fantastic moment that he had. But then right afterwards, he had to run into the wilderness for his life because Queen Jezebel, the wicked Queen Jezebel, was seeking to kill him, and she was succeeding at doing so, and he had no defense. He had to run away in the desert, where he became so depressed and so despondent that he prayed to God to take his life. And of course, God did not want to take his life, and so God said, I'm going to send you a vision. I want to tell you something, and I want you to go into a cleft of the rock from where you'll see this vision. And this is an interesting, because it was in the cleft of a rock, probably the same one, that Moshe had his greatest vision, his most intimate impression and insight into the Almighty. So Eliyahu was taken to the same place, and he's hiding there in the cleft of the rock, and the verse tells us that there was a tremendous wind that came and hurled rocks and smashed mountains, and he looked out through the cleft, and God was not in that wind. And then an earthquake came and cleaved the earth and made tremendous noise, frightening, awesome. We can picture this now that we have scenes from movies in our minds. It's just, mind-boggling to have been there. And he looked out, but God was not in that earthquake. And then there was a huge firestorm raging across the landscape. And he looked out, and God was not in that firestorm. And then, finally, we're told there was a kol demama dako, which means a thin, silent voice. And that's where God was found. And that's the vision. And shortly after, he came back to himself. He didn't want to die anymore. And when he found his disciple Elisha, and he threw his mantle on him, and he passed on the reins. And he later ascended to heaven and comes back to visit us every Passover Eve and every Bris Milah. We have a chair for him. And that's the story of Eliyahu. So what's the message in there? And the message is that there was a time, such as the time of Pinchas, the time of Moshe, the time of the Bible, when there were heroic moments, fantastic, that turned around the world. And those were those times. But they're not to be found anymore. Where will you find God today? In the thin, silent voice. What is that thin, silent voice? It's us doing what we know to be the right thing. That's where the divine is found today. And so that was the message to Eliyahu. You're not going to change so much. You're not going to overturn the world. The world's not going to be like it was in the heroic times, fantastic, heroic moments, and everything changes. It's not the way it's going to work anymore. But instead, God's going to be found in those still small moments, the regular things. So in a sense, that's what my book is about, because we are all good people. We are all behaving ourselves. The Torah, as it was meant to be, has infiltrated itself into society and social mores in a wide part of the world today. And many of us are doing mitzvahs all the time we're not even aware of, because it's just passed into conventional behavior. And so we're doing those mitzvahs, but the Torah tells us, the rabbis inform us, that in order to get the most reward, which is to say the biggest benefit out of doing a mitzvah, is you have to know you're doing the mitzvah. That is, you have to look out and see that small, thin voice. It's not enough just to obey it or listen to it, but you have to see it, you have to recognize it, you have to know it's there. So all these small moments of things that we're doing already, all the right things, but we're often not aware, we don't make ourselves consciously aware of how that's really in concert with the divine will, how that's a mitzvah, how that's biblical proportions, but in a new way, in a small way. So I wrote this book, Reward Miles to Heaven, because not to tell people how to behave. They're already behaving in fantastic ways, but they're not always aware of all the magnificent moments that they have every day in their everyday life. So I've taken about 30 mitzvahs, and I've described some of the parameters of the mitzvah, and then I show how we're doing this all the time in just everyday actions. And all we have to do in order now to collect a large part of its benefit, the reward miles, because you know what's reward miles? You're going to buy something anyways. And so if you flash a card, you get this huge extra benefit that you accumulate over time. So the same thing here. You're doing the behavior anyways. You're acting beautifully. But we're not often conscious of how divinely we're acting. So I'm trying to bring that into our consciousness and give everybody reward miles to heaven by making them more conscious of the divine acts and the small little things that they're doing every day. So I don't know, there wasn't official. My book normally sells for $25 plus tax or something like that in bookstores. Tonight it's available for $20, $55 if you buy all 4 books. Altogether we got a special package, and I'm told it's well written. I know Mrs. Foster and Mrs. Thompson, my grade 7 and 8 teachers, would have been proud of the accomplishment. I'm certainly pleased that they taught me what they did, so I was able to do it, and I've enjoyed the compliments that I received, and I hope to benefit you as well through the book. Thank you very much.